Hey, somebody needs to run some laps. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to the Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. This week, the Professional Noticer is sponsored by wisdomharbor.com. Today, families and school systems all over America are finding wisdomharbor.com's one-of-a-kind streaming service to be the perfect, low-cost, high-quality educational tool for their students. Wisdom Harbor's stated responsibility is to create the next greatest generation, starting with your hometown and your school system. For less than $3 a month per teacher, classrooms have access to original content only found on wisdomharbor.com that teaches, entertains, and builds character in young people while creating conversations between young people and the adults in their community. Utilizing video, audio, and the written word, content is delivered in small bites by Grammy winners, CEOs, comedians, chefs, best-selling authors, and Hall of Fame speakers. There are even guitar lessons from an award-winning songwriter. Check it out today and join your friends and neighbors who are already a part of wisdomharbor.com. And isn't it time your schools got involved? wisdomharbor.com, creating America's next greatest generation, starting with your hometown. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on the Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. And we have that today. We have one of my favorite people, and he's been one of my favorite people for a long time. In fact, he was one of my favorite people before I ever met him. He's a national championship coach. He is in the College Football Hall of Fame. He is the just recently retired president of Youngstown State. And now he has some amazing things going on, but I want to introduce you to Jim Tressel. Jim, how are you doing, buddy?
You know, Andy, I'm doing great. And you know, kind of likewise, I read your stuff before I knew you. And then by good fortune, we had a chance to connect. I think one time when you were presenting in Columbus, I had a chance to sit in, and then you had a chance to, every year we studied a book with our team. And you know, the year we did Traveler's Gift, you had a chance to come up and meet the kids. And to this day, I hear from my guys that always, you know, keep their 7 decisions right on their doorstep. And so I've just loved reading everything you've done and the creativity you have with how you connect with, you know, us old people, but also the youngsters. And, you know, it's just been a blessing to get to know you and truly an honor to be with you here today.
Well, you're very kind. How's Ellen? How's her golf swing?
Ellen's doing well. I think she's about a 10.4 or something handicap. She's doing well. And every year she'll take me out for 9 holes. I'm not the greatest athlete. And she'll take me out for 9 holes just to spank me to make sure I know who's in charge of this household. But we're blessed. We've got 3 grandkids, but the newest one is only 9 months old. And you know, when they're 9 months, you know, they're a special joy. And so we're so blessed, we can't stand it.
That is awesome. Buddy, I appreciate you taking the time. You know, I think of you often. I have in the studio here, I have I guess a showcase cabinets with glass and lights, and I've got your playbook from that year that you used, the Traveler's Gift, with all the Traveler's Gift stuff on it, and I got a picture of you and me in there, and I think of you often.
Thank you.
And I've got to tell you before we get into some questions, I've got to tell you something that I tell people about you, and I don't want to embarrass you or anything, but I say, you know, of all the coaches that I've ever worked with, Jim Tressel is the only guy that I've ever worked with who could have done anything. And I tell people, I said, if he'd wanted to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, he'd have been there. President of the United States, been there. You know, you you are one of the few people that I've met that has the discipline, the smarts, and the personality to carry off whatever you want. And I've watched you for years and been amazed at that.
I
So, and
appreciate it.
I know what can you say when I say that, but
Right. Right.
I've always wanted to tell you that I tell
Thank you.
people that about you. What do you think? And we're going to talk about. I'm excited about what you are getting going now, and so we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I'm curious, why did you decide at this time to retire from Youngstown State? I've seen some of the numbers about the graduation rate that you dramatically increased while you were there, the funding that you were able to facilitate raising while you were there, and so you seem pretty young to me. You made some comment a minute ago about being old, but why did you decide to retire now?
Well, I'm not that young. I'm 71. I was in higher education for about 48 years. Uh, and, I think for all those years, our calendar for our family was built around everything we had to do. And it was so busy. And whether it was every Christmas we were at a bowl game, or every Father's Day we were at youth camp. We had about 5 Saturdays a year where we didn't have anything. That was the kind of schedule a head coach had. Well, when I became a president, I didn't realize it was going to be worse, because now you not only have the athletic department, you have the music school and the engineering school and the business school and the fundraising, and so we just kind of decided that we wanted to see if we could do a better job of managing our calendar. Now, I must tell you, Andy, I have flunked retirement. Uh, haven't I haven't figured it out quite yet. And Ellen always laughs. Everyone asks her, "Well, how's retirement?" She said, "He hasn't retired." But I just thought it was the time that we wanted to see if we could uh, maybe do some different things, have more time for the family and for one another, and but still try to figure out every which way we could to add value to other people, because that's my problem is work is more fun than fun, and so
I'm the same way. Yeah.
right. I mean, it's just and I'm trying to get a little bit of a handle on it, but I can't help myself sometimes. But since you embarrassed me, I have to embarrass you real quickly, okay? Because since we had a chance to study as a team, and that becomes when you study with others and work on growing, that's even more, I think, meaningful than when you just do it yourself. And so when we studied as a team, the traveler's gift, and it just became a part of who we were. To this day, I will tell you that every single morning, one of the 7 decisions is on my prayer list and on my thought list to begin the day.
Wow.
Whether it was, uh, you know, today I will choose to be happy, or that happens to be my Thursdays. My Fridays are always, I will meet this day with a forgiving spirit. And so trust me when I tell you, I've been a disciple, of the Bible. I've been a disciple of John Wooden. I've been a disciple of Zig Ziglar or John Maxwell, Andy Andrews. That's my Hall of Fame. And I just want you
Wow.
to know that you're clearly, uh, have made a difference in my life and the lives of my players and my former coaches, and they're the ones that keep me busy. I have about 4,000 phone numbers in my phone, and if my phone rings and there's not one of my players' names ringing in, and there's no name on it, I usually don't pick it up, because if you're not in my top 4,000, I can't find time for it right now. But
I hear
but
you.
truly, you've made a difference, and I just thought it was the right time to see if there was something else in this next chapter that we could continue to do to help.
Who are you watching now? Who's in your coaching tree? I know Luke is in Wisconsin,
Yep. Yep.
and I know how close you are to him and how proud you are of him.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
You've
Well,
got Notre Dame now.
yep. Marcus Freeman's at Notre Dame, and PJ Fleck is at the University of Minnesota. And I was just up this past week to see the University of South Florida. Alex Golish was one of our student coaches, and he's the head coach at the University of South Florida. And I'm thinking, man, my student coaches are now head coaches. It is time for me to be retired. We've got a young man named Brian Wright, who's the head coach out at University of Northern Arizona, and we've got assistant coaches, all over the place. And Mark D'Antonio just retired. He was the head coach at Michigan State, and Mel Tucker went through his tough time there. Was the head coach at Colorado, then Michigan State, and so we've had a lot of guys. We've been blessed, and just. But what's kind of funny, and I know you get this all the time, whether they were in your actual tree or they maybe had just learned from someone like third generation through your tree. I get letters and emails and calls and, hey, could you talk to me about our program? Here's what we're involved in. And even if they weren't directly on our tree, I love helping people trying to build their programs.
I'm interested to see how Nick is gonna navigate what you've navigated for a while now. I know you just had some time. You went other side of the state and yep. Hung out with him the other yep. day. Yep. And so, how does he seem? Does he seem good with what's going on?
He does. I think he, like anyone else, he's kind of searching a little bit for, what's the exact right fit. The game of football has been so good to him, and he's very concerned about the future, of collegiate athletics. And so I know he's given some time to talk to people in Congress and this and that. We get calls all the time from people who want to try to figure out a way to solve it. And we were just chatting about it the other day that, I think we first have to figure out what is our desired outcome we're looking for before we start just, knee jerk and fix this and change that and so forth. And so I think Nick really wants to be a part of the solution. He won. I mean, he's probably the best coach of my time. And he won, hundreds and hundreds of games. But I tell you what, Nick's program was built on wanting to develop the whole person, which is right. Why we all went into coaching. None of us went into coaching. I was making $100 a month when I started coaching. Nick started, I think, the same year I did. And so we didn't go into it thinking that, there was gold at the end of the rainbow. We wanted to help kids. And I know that's where his heart is right now. And to see if we can somehow help get a little bit better direction in this crazy football world, this crazy world in general, I guess. But I think he'll do fine. He's, I think he'll be interested maybe doing a little TV work and those kinds of things because he'll have a great voice. He can have impact. But he's a special one in our generation.
Yeah. I was talking to Greg Sankey a couple of weeks ago, the commissioner of the SEC, and I was a little bit shocked to hear that the states control the NIL.
Yeah.
That it's like 32 different rule books. And so, and everybody that I know is like desperately concerned about what's going on. What is your take on this? Is it, I won't ask you to say it's out of control. I think it's out of control, but how close are we to doing something?
It is a little rudderless right now. There's no question. I think the Greg Sankeys and the SEC and the Big Ten, who now both have 17 or 18 teams in them.
Right.
They're really going to be the loudest voice. And that's what's going to be interesting because, again, you go back to what's our outcome. if the conversation is all about revenue generation, and how are we going to get our hands around the fact that there are all those different state legislators, have their rules. The federal government has their rules. The NCAA, right now is kind of a little bit of an afterthought, just kind of trying to figure it out as well. What is going to be what we're seeking, and what's the trickle down effect going to be? Because I think the SECs and the Big Tens and so forth, like the major R1 universities, they're going to be fine because they just, the resources they have and they don't have a demographic problem. They just go take great students from wherever they can, get them all over the world and
Right.
so forth. But the rest of us, the bottom 85% of the universities, what's going to be the trickle down effect of whatever decisions are made? And what will be interesting to me will be in those conversations with the people that will put the rudder on the ship. I think the SEC and the Big Ten, the ACC and the Big 12, how will that affect the rest of the fleet, if you will?
Right.
And so it's going to be, I think it's going to be interesting, and nothing happens fast, especially when there's the political side of it in every state and the country. And of course, the giant revenue with the television contracts, and it's way more complex than everyone says, well, here's the idea, here's what we should do. Well, let's think about all the other effect. And so I'll be anxious, and that's just what Nick and I were talking about. Who is going to be in the room to bring up all the what ifs? And I was just reading from Robert Greenleaf. I don't know if you've ever read, but he was back in the 80s and 90s, and he talked about, if you're really going to do a good job in servant leadership and making a difference and so forth, you have to be a great historian. There's no question. You have to figure out, how did we get to this place?
Right.
Just like you brought up, you were talking in one of your things about, Robert Wallace and the George Washington Carver and, all that. If you really dig back, there's a lot of people that impacted that, being able to feed 2 billion more people and, all
Right.
those kinds of things. And so you need to be a good historian. And so people in that room are going to have a handle on the history. And then you're going to have to, Greenleaf also said, you're going to have to do a good job with contemporary analytics. What's going on today, because that's driving the ship. But where you're really successful, if you really want to lead in a servant leadership direction, is how well will you be as a prophet, a prophet, that kind of prophet, as to what is going to be the effect of your decisions down the road,
Right.
on all of the people down the road. And so I'll be anxious, just like Greg is, I'm sure, and Nick and everyone else that's having general conversations. Will there be a body put together that will do a great job serving us, serving the game?
Let me throw this out here, and feel free to tell me that I'm being silly here.
Okay.
because I really kind of hope I am being silly. But with everything that I'm hearing about NIL and Alabama has a kid that entered the transfer portal after this past season to Iowa for $100,000 and then stayed there a little bit. And now he's entered the transfer portal and he's back at Alabama and he gets to keep the $100,000. And that's, that's out of Iowa's money. But here's something that, and I hope this is silly. Is it possible that there's going to be some oil billionaire that's going to go, this year, the University of Tulsa is going to win the national championship.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to do it in 1 year, and we're going to have our national championship. I mean,
with the current state of affairs, that could happen. And
I was hoping you would tell me that was silly.
well, I hope that doesn't happen. And that's why we've got to get a handle on this a little bit. And that's why people, I think, are working so hard to have those discussions. But, like anything else, we always talk about when you talked about the impact of feeding people in arid lands in that one discussion I just recently was listening to on Wisdom Harbor, it happened in inches, right? The Missouri farmer with the George Washington Carver to the Henry Wallace to the, all that. Well, things happen in inches, but they all also slide in inches. And
Yeah.
our intercollegiate athletics complexity has slid in inches to the fact that that could happen, that a billionaire could say, hey, I'll pay for whatever you need to do. Go get this player, this player, this player. And in the current state of affairs, that could happen. That's why we've got to get the current state of affairs to have a little bit of a little governor on them right now.
Yeah.
And I hope it happens sooner rather than later. But things happen so slowly. It's going to be interesting to watch. It was neat listening to the University of Connecticut coach after the game when they won the national championship again. And he talked about, hey, this whole thing has worked well for us. We've got some good high school kids getting better, and we go pluck the kind of player we need from here or there. And they're NBA level. They might not be a first round pick, but they're NBA level. But I make sure that what they care about is the team, and they want to come be a part of a great team, and they're not that worried about what's in it for them only. And
Right.
so there are some people that are really doing well with this current anarchy or whatever we're a part of. But I'd like to believe we're going to get a handle on it. But what you brought up is not inconceivable that could happen.
Well, this is a good segue into what you're doing now. I am so excited about this and so interested in it. So tell everybody about It's All About the Team. Tell us what's going on.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. As we were in our last year or so at Youngstown State serving as the president, someone came to me and said, one thing that I think it was someone from business and industry said, your engineering students are great, your accountants are great, your nurses are great. They really come with a lot of knowledge, but man, they need to grow in some of the personal skills and they need to have some of those soft skills or whatever. And would you think about creating some kind of curriculum or whatever that might help the students beyond their academic discipline? So we studied various universities, about 40 universities that had these leadership centers or leadership institutes that were there to give those kids some of those personal leadership skills, some of the things that, every day you learn on Wisdom Harbor or whatever, but get it infused into them while they're in school. And it's kind of what we did with our winner's manual at Ohio State and Youngstown State when we were coaching. It wasn't all about football. It was about building their whole being and their whole ability level. And so we created an institute for leadership and teamwork because we saw that many universities had a leadership center or institute, but not many of them really focused on teamwork because we were kept hearing from companies, these kids don't come in with that ability to work together and collaborate and be willing to take the role they need to take and so forth. So we started that institute and we had 600 or 800 students going through as we were building the curriculum and trying to figure out, and we didn't want an extra course they had to pay for or anything like that. So it was extra badges and certificates they could get just to add value to their degree. So then when we retired, one of the local media sites in Youngstown, Warren area in Ohio, the Youngstown Business Journal, came to us and said, we really need to grow how we add value to the people in our region. Would you think about coming on and doing an article each week or do this or that? And so one thing led to another. And I said, the thing that I would have fun doing, because I'm still a teacher and still a coach, is how about if we make the focus teamwork? and let them go to the zillion sites they can go for the leadership type things, but let's
Right.
zero in on the team. So hence, we decided to create a podcast uh, entitled It's All About the Team, and have all of our guests talk about how they worked to build teams in every phase, whether it was a business or manufacturing or a hospital or the military or a sports team or a media organization, and get their insights as to the things that have been effective, that have helped them build the team, as opposed to allowing people to just be focused on what it is individually they're gaining from being a part of that company or team. So anyway, in May, we're going to launch a podcast on YouTube with the title It's All About the Team. And we're hoping one day Andy Andrews is one of our guests on one of the episodes. And
well, you don't have to hope about that. You just give me the date and I'll be there for you.
Well, and so we're excited, and it's been fun. I've started off with a couple of our former players, AJ Hawk, if you remember AJ from the Green Bay Packers, and we just did an episode. We've been trying to get some of these in the can to be ready to go so we can put one out a week. Just did one with a young man named Nate Ebner, and you met Nate when you were there, because Nate was a kid that walked on at Ohio State, never played high school football, was a youth rugby player, ended up getting drafted by the New England Patriots, played 10 years, won 3 Super Bowls, but also Coach Belichick let him go to the Olympics and represent the U.S. in rugby in 2016. And so that particular year, he played in the Olympics. Coach let him miss preseason, played for the Patriots. They won the Super Bowl, and he was all pro as a special teams player. And he's got an amazing story. He lost his father while he was in high school, who was murdered. They owned a junkyard, and there was a break-in, and a break-in gone bad. And so we've been trying to start with some of our people that we really know a lot about, the teams they've been on, and we'd love to hear about Bill Belichick or Mike McCarthy at the Green Bay Packers. How did they build this? And we're going to eventually move off into, well, how did this company, what did they do intentionally to create the team? Because it's so natural to be about, it's all about me and my compensation or my role that I get to play or whatever. So anyway, I've been having fun just listening to our guys to see what they've learned. And as we're going to move along, we have I think the only 4-star general in the Air Force that ever started in an ROTC program, General Marianne Miller, is going to be one of our guests coming up. We haven't filmed hers yet. And, how do you go from being a 5'0" ROTC female at Ohio State to being a 4-star general? And what is it about the building of the team that she saw throughout that, career? And so we're excited to see if we can add value to people as they think about how they can build a better team and be a better team member.
That is awesome. Well, as soon as this launches, we will let our audience know. And if you're watching this or listening to this right now, just stay tuned, because we want you to be a part of this and subscribe to this awesome new podcast. You have taught me a lot through the years, Jim, personally, and just by watching you. I look at you have an unusual, it's an unusual career arc, because you have built teams in a traditional sense and in a non-traditional sense. You've built teams coaching football, and you've built teams as the head of a major university. Youngstown State, if I'm not wrong, in that's the second largest college in Ohio, isn't it?
No, we're not. We have 14 public universities, believe it or not. And we're not like Ohio State or Cincinnati or the rest, but we're about 12,000 students. And for years and years, when the steel mills were going big, all we did was serve the people that lived right there, because there were so many people working in the steel mills, and they all came at once, and they all had children, right after the war. And now, obviously, steel has gone elsewhere. Uh, our demographics are a little bit of a challenge. We've kind of changed how we've gone about things, but we've traditionally had an unbelievable engineering school. Our business school has been very successful. Our healthcare, the need for nurses and physical therapists and dietitians and respiratory therapists and all those things. But really, we sit halfway between Pittsburgh and Cleveland. And so we serve a region of about, I don't know what it would be, 5 or 6 million people. And we're one of the, very necessary employers for all of those professional type things. And it's just been so much fun to watch the evolution of, in 1977, they lost 42,000 jobs in one day, Black
Good.
Monday.
Good.
And that was the only industry in the community. And so then when we came there to coach, that was at a time where they needed something good to happen just for their own self-image. And it was such a blessing that our guys went out and won all those championships and all that. And then we went away to Ohio State for 10 years and got to come back and just be another part of the evolution of really making our university continue to thrive and play the role that it needs to play. And so it was harder, though, Andy, I'll tell you this, to build a team with 2,000 employees than just 100 players. I had maybe 12 coaches and 100 players, and it was pretty easy to stay on the same page. We all kind of were there for a common cause. When you're at a university, you have the College of Engineering has their needs, and business has their needs, and music, and we had 4 unions. We had faculty with tenure and academic senate. And so my team building skills were tested much more in an operation like that than, they were with just 100 guys. But, it's funny. The same fundamentals are the case. Listening closely, to what the people are thinking and what their needs are and what their dreams are. And then rolling your sleeves up to see if you could help them accomplish that, and that's what building a team is. So people ask all the time, Andy, did you like better, being a president or a head coach, or which was harder? And I liked them both the same because the challenge was fabulous. I mean, you can't win enough games at Ohio State or Alabama or Tennessee. It's impossible to win enough games. Well, it's impossible to run a university and make everyone happy too. And so the thrill of the journey, the process, has been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, I don't think anybody could be better equipped to start It's All About the Team than Jim Tressel. So what can we do? What can we do to help you right now?
Well, just being on your podcast is huge, because I know how many people turn to you and have gained so much, and it's those little things that you gain when you take them back to your team. And that's why when we studied Traveler's Gift, it was just those little oh yeah, things that could make a difference. And so I know how many people turn to you, and if they have some needs as they're thinking about, how can we build our team a little bit better? Then we'd love for them to tune in when we launch in the first week or so of May, and spread the news. And if we can help, if we can add value, that's the beauty of it.
Well, you will. And so I am pledging to you, I am going to promote this, and we're going to get as many people who listen to us to listen to you as we possibly can. So thank you so much for being with us.
Well, my
I
pleasure.
really appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you are in retirement, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, we appreciate all you do, and anytime anyone brings up, a lot of people say, well, what are you reading? And I always like to say, well, I may be reading this right now, but let me give you the 5 that I've read before that have made the difference. And the Traveler's Gift and the Noticer, and I just wrote one down. I haven't read the one about the island of, what's the
Island of Saints.
I'm gonna get that one here
Now,
coming up.
the new title on that is The Heartmender.
Oh,
So, have you read The Heartmender?
no, no.
Buddy, I'm going to get that out to you today.
Wow. Okay.
I will get it
Well,
out to you
thank you.
today.
Yeah. But
So,
when anyone asks who do I read, in the old days it was Zig Ziglar. When growing up in my time, that was the go-to. And even before that, maybe Napoleon Hill. I'm not sure,
yeah, yeah.
who it was. But in my last 30 years, there's clearly two that I have to read from: Andy Andrews and John Maxwell, because
Wow.
learn every day.
Wow. Well, thank you, buddy. Thank you so much. And we'll
All
talk
right,
to
my
you
friend.
soon.
Yes, sir. God bless you.
All
See
right.
ya.
Bye
All
bye.
righty.
I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing what tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Blocking sleds for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by dummitdown.com. By now, surely you've heard of the toy maker Mattel's decision to manufacture an easier version of one of the most popular board games in history. Citing Gen Z players who have deemed it too hard, Scrabble is in for a change. The new version, called Woke Scrabble by some, is built to be more collaborative and less competitive than the original. Scrabble Together is the new name, and the game comes with helper cards and allows people to play in teams. In effect, no one has to think for themselves. Now, dummitdown.com is helping game manufacturers do the same thing to their classics. Monopoly is suggested to have only 8 properties on the board. Only $1 bills are included so that players can all do the math. And all properties cost the same. No one gets too far ahead and hurts the feelings of the other players. Dummitdown.com is also targeting Sorry, Clue, Life, and Trivial Pursuit. Not only will we make the games easier, participation ribbons are included in every box. Log on now to see what's new. It's games for adults that still have their training wheels. Dummitdown.com.